Hi, boys and girls. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope you were able to get outside and enjoy some of the weather as well. That sun felt so great. I was able to get out and take the boys for a walk, and well, Emmerich rode his bike. And then I also went, did a run out in the cemetery, which is kind of near my house. I like to run there because it's very peaceful and there's no cars, which is the best part because I'm trying to stay safe. Okay, so I've got two stories for you today. These ones kind of have a theme of food, I guess you could say. And so the first one is one that a friend of mine gave to Emmerich when he was a little bit younger, and both Emmerich and Abraham have loved it. So this one is called Little P. Little P. Okay, so we'll go ahead, and it is by Amy Rosenthal, and it's illustrated by Jen Carace. This is the story of Little P, Mama P, and Papa P. Little P was a happy little guy. He liked to do a lot of things. He liked rolling down hills, for example, super fast. He liked hanging out with his pea pals. He liked it when Papa P came home at the end of the day. Papa P would fling Little P off a spoon high into the air, and Little P would scream, "Again, again!" At bedtime, Little P very much snuggling with Mama P and hearing stories about what Mama P was like when she was a little P. But there was one thing that Little P did not like. Candy. That's what you have to eat for dinner every night when you're a P. Candy, candy, candy. Candy, huh? Monday, red candy. Tuesday, orange candy. Wednesday, yellow candy. Thursday, pink and purple polka dotted candy. Friday, striped candy. Saturday, swirly candy. Sunday, rainbow candy. Little P hated all of it. What do you think about candy for dinner? I think you guys might have a bit of a different opinion than Little P. If you want to grow up to be a big, strong P, you have to eat your candy, Papa P would say. If you don't finish your candy, then you can't have any dessert, Mama P would say. Have your mom or dad ever said that to you? How many pieces do I have to eat? Eat 5 pieces and you can have dessert. 5 pieces, he whined. 5 pieces, they chimed. One, yuck. 2, blah. Pages don't want to turn. 3, pluck. 4, pluck. 5 pieces of candy. Now can I have dessert? Yes, now you can have dessert, said Mama and Papa P. Little P couldn't wait to see what it was. What would you want for dessert? I wonder what Little P wants. Spinach, squealed Little P, my favorite. Little P licked his dessert plate clean. Yum, yum, extra yum. And they lived happily ever after. Get it? Happily? Okay, so that's Little P. That's a fun book. And I actually found out that there are 2 other little something stories. I don't remember what they are, but I found them at our public library. So those might be worth checking out. Our next story is one you might have heard, and I think there's actually even a movie for it. But since it's kind of food themed, I thought we would go with it. And it is Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I really like this story. It's fun. This one's a little bit longer, so you're gonna have to bear with me. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we could each eat, and Grandpa was doing the flipping. I love the illustrations in this story. Seconds later, something flew through the air and headed toward the kitchen ceiling and landed right on Henry. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry's head. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall-tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Across an ocean over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores and houses and trees and gardens. Around them, a schoolhouse and about 300 people and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. That's kind of strange. Whatever the weather was served was what they ate. But it never rained rain, it never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice, it snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes wind blew in storms of hamburgers. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. So we see the news reporter, it's cloudy, meatballs. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and usually there were, people took them home and put them in their refrigerator in case they got hungry between meals. So here are some of the, so we see pancakes, pie, some sort of soup or juice, and she's running to catch what looks like chicken. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny side up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterward. For lunch one day, frankfurters already in their rolls blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby. The wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times, with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by a gradual clearing with a wonderful jello setting in the west. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the cats and dogs. They emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for people's flower gardens. Life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worse. It says, spaghetti ties up the town. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. The next day there was only broccoli, all overcooked. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. Oh. Another day there was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of their meal that got stuck in the fog. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. People were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds and some without. There was white bread and rye and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds just picked at it a bit, but it just stayed there and got staler and staler. Then there was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close the school. Lunch one day brought 15 inches of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomach ache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The whole town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere. The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. Abandon means everyone is going to leave. People glued together giant pieces of stale bread, sandwich style with peanut butter, took the absolute necessities with them and set sail on their rafts for a new land. So look, here's their sail. They've got Swiss cheese, piece of pizza, got a piece of bacon up at the top. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. And the children began school again, and all the adults tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest change they had to get used to was getting used to buying food at the supermarket. They found it odd, and the food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except snow and rain. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared to go back to the town of Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's goodnight story. I remember his goodnight kiss. The next morning we woke up to see the snow falling outside our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter at the top. We could almost smell the mashed potatoes. The end. Okay, boys and girls, I hope you like those food-themed stories for today. So I'll be back again tomorrow, but until then, I hope you guys have a great day. I love you, and I'll see you soon.